Hey everybody, it's Stick Vet, your friendly neighborhood veteran, and this is part 5 of the Warriors Reflection series. I would react to sights, sounds, movement, and touch in a crazy way, as though I were back in war. This is the part of warrior cleansing that you probably recognize. It's the piece that PTSD attempts to describe, and it's easily perceived by civilians as an unusual behavior. This is a psychological perspective of who veterans are, and it dominates the landscape and claims to be the whole issue. But when it comes to the path of cleansing that veterans face, PTSD accounts for 1/20th of the problem. This is why so many veterans who have done therapy, learned coping skills, and changed their lives to be healthier either believe the treatment didn't help or still feel they have unfinished work to do. The treatments work. They just help with 1/20th of the entirety of the problem. This is the only part of the path that you can easily find resources for. In fact, I wonder how many people who find this Warriors Reflection series helpful have already done the work of this one step. Please comment about that. I'm curious. For me, I've had a PTSD service animal since returning home, and it's been the best for my own healing in this manner. Even though I've taught and practiced the multitude of PTSD treatments when I was a counselor for vets, Stick Dog was how I was actually able to handle my hypervigilance around crowds and public spaces. Stick Dog would remind me of reality, immediately grounding me from where my mind was taking me. I had to still do the work. For years, I would repeatedly mutter to myself, I listened to my thoughts with a grain of salt. PTSD is also depicted in such a stereotypical Hollywood manner, as if all veterans are scared of fireworks or go crazy when cars backfire. Although those things might happen, the characterization of it is based in this narrative that soldiers are victims of war. The professionally ignorant civilians that invented the diagnosis of PTSD did so with the intention of describing the effects of war on a normal mind. So not only is PTSD like 1/20th of the problem, but the entire perspective of PTSD that we are taught is a half-truth. Because war is not happening to soldiers. They are not merely victims. Soldiers are active participants in the war. So let me tell a story to more accurately describe the mental damage participating in a war can lead to. This is the story of the gunner. One of my brothers that I was a counselor for long time ago. He was a gunner on a Humvee throughout his deployment. And this was back when where he was, the issue was VBIEDs, vehicular bombs, suicide bombers in cars. And the tactic of the enemy was to have an individual on a cell phone on a vantage point who would call the person in the car and tell them when to floor it in order to ram into the convoy of Humvees that are traveling along and kill the soldiers. That's the enemy tactic. So the gunner was taught this, and then the first time it happened, it was just surprise. Didn't even see it. Steps up his game. He notices on a patrol someone on a cell phone who's really looking at them. He calls it in. Information is not relayed in time. Boom. Soldiers die. He steps up his game. He's able to see the person on the cell phone, call it in, transfer that information, his LT transfers the information and saves lives. Sometimes. This happens a lot. And it specifically happens a lot when they're doing the end of their deployment, and the new group is coming in, and he was a stop-loss vet. So he goes from this driving around constantly looking for this very specific threat. And stop-loss vet means his time was up while he was deployed, but you don't get to just leave. You have to finish your deployment. That's what a stop-loss vet is. And he was just processed out super fast. So it's just months later. He's driving around in civilian sector with his girlfriend. And she gets on the phone at the exact same time that a cop pulls out a couple blocks down. And his brain is telling him, she told the cop. She called him. That's a threat. Things like that over and over. Someone gets on their phone, someone pulls out, and now he's feeling like he's in danger. He had so many incidents, he lost his license. It was like 8 times he bumped into some other car or just trying to get away from a threat that didn't exist. But it was this paranoia and these thoughts that he had to depend upon to survive and to save the lives of his brothers are the exact same thoughts that are now lying to him. Because he's not in a war zone. There is no enemy. When I met the gunner, I had been repeating, I listened to my thoughts with a grain of salt, but he needed something deeper. Through his work, he found a belief structure to keep him on his path that he brought to me. And it was a dramatic change that I saw in him. I think he tattooed it on his arm. He said, "I am not this mind that I live in." And I took that lesson and ran with it. It became the beginning of my cleansing mantra that I repeat daily to this day. It all starts with getting out of my head. I am not this mind that I live in, but I listen to my thoughts with a grain of salt. See you? This is Stick Vet, signing off.